made a jump before. Good time to learn!
A film about some young hotshot pilots in space, but for various reasons feels like the loading screens in a video game.
Now come on, this is sterile conjecture.
Wing Commander.
We die.
Wing Commander was a 1999 science fiction film directed by Chris Roberts based on the computer game series that he'd created. At the time the film was released, video game to film adaptations had a reputation dodgier than an accountant buying a one-way first-class ticket to a country without an extradition treaty. Wing Commander, on the other hand, does absolutely nothing to alter the perception of video games being poor source material for a film, which is a bit weird because Wing Commander is the sort of computer game that was tailor-made for a film adaptation. The film version of Wing Commander is something like 90% exposition, background, and plot, with whatever's left, character development, straining to fill the gap. So if you want people explaining what's going on or what's just happened and pretty much nothing else, then this is the film for you. In the 27th century, humans are spread out throughout the galaxy as part of the Terran Confederation, but are at war with the Kilrathi. Hotshot rookie pilots Lieutenant Christopher Blair and his best bud Todd Marshall are heading for their first posting when their transport ship is nearly gobbled up by a gravity well. Blair is able to calculate coordinates in order to jump the ship to safety, faster than any computer would have done the same thing. Okay kids, now you may need a notebook to track this stuff.
Yeah.
Once on their new ship, the Tiger Claw, the film proper begins, with all the exposition an exposition junkie will want.
It tells me that the Kilrathi may have a navcom, and with it the capacity to jump into Earth space.
So, while Blair has brought orders to the Tiger Claw's captain, everyone mistrusts him because his mother was a pilgrim. Pilgrims were early human explorers who developed a sort of knack for space travel, and yet some war happened and, well, yeah, people just don't like Blair because of that. He also gets off on the wrong foot with his new CO, Lieutenant Commander Devereaux, who, while she's not the main character, is actually the Wing Commander. Marshall, on the other hand, attempts to win friends and influence people, though he has most success with fellow hotshot pilot Rosie.
From the sophistication of the equipment on board, I'd say the vessel is a command and communications module.
And then there are quite a few action scenes in space, some more stuff on the bridge, and then it turns out that the grizzled and weary Captain Taggart of the transport early in the film is an undercover Commodore Paladin.
My call sign is Paladin.
While the captain of the Tiger Claw is killed, Rosie also ends up in the space drink, and Marshall loses his mojo for a few minutes. And then the race is on to prevent the Kilrathi from making the jump to Earth, where, look, sorry, I just gave up on caring about this story about, 45 minutes ago. Devereaux, also known as Angel, is thought lost, but then she isn't. Blair has managed to lead the Kilrathi into a trap, and everybody goes home happy, except of course for life insurance providers on the Kilrathi homeworld.
Your parents would have been proud.
This is not a film that reviewed all that well when it came out, and even with a relatively low budget, it did pretty poorly in theatres when it showed up in March of 1999. Now, what was I doing in March of that year? I don't recall exactly, but I don't think it was my intention to completely ignore Wing Commander. That is just how things shook out. Freddie Prinze Jr. and Matthew Lillard seem to be joined at the hip for a few years, appearing in several films together. Lillard is the live wire, while Prinze sounds like he should be appearing in a movie about a pubic lice outbreak at spring break called The Itch.
Excuse me?
Saffron Burrows is there to class up the joint.
Kilrathi gangbang.
Ginny Holder is Rosie, while Mark Hamill provided the voice of Merlin.
We are the Earth's only hope.
While the film's littered with character actors like David Warner, David Suchet, Jurgen Prochnow, Tcheky Karyo, and Simon McCorkindale, possibly each wondering what had gone wrong with their careers up to this point.
Did I just give a suggestion or an order?
I got your wing, man.
The acting is adequate for the most part, which is nice because the dialogue and plot often isn't. It's not ingrown toenail bad, but it's more of an annoying hangnail.
No one's jumped a pulsar for 40 years, and even then they were pilgrims.
It's part Top Gun in space. Actually, no, it's mainly just Top Gun in space, coming a few years after the short-lived series Space Above and Beyond, which probably did this thing a bit better, and a couple of years before Battlestar Galactica, which definitely did this much better.
Now we make them sorry they were ever born.
Wing Commander has some entertainment value, but it mostly fails as a movie for various reasons.
Sir, that's statistically impossible.
We don't have another option.
Mainly because it just wants to cram in so much backstory that honestly is not that important to most people who are going to see this in the multiplexes. There's a saying in movie making, which is you have to learn how to kill your babies. That is not necessarily infanticide. What that means is If you're the writer or director and you have scenes that you absolutely love but really don't need to be in the movie, you need to learn how to cut them. Wing Commander's problem is pretty much there's a lot of stuff that could be trimmed in order to make the movie work, but people who are enamored with the backstory just couldn't let go of it.
What are you people looking at? Carry on about your business. Nothing to see here, ladies and gentlemen.
So maybe we should just take a step back and look at what the hell a wing commander is. So is it a wing commander or a wing commander? But if you're a wing commander, not a wing commander, you've already clicked dislike and buggered off.
Guy's got a serious attitude problem.
In 1990, developer Chris Roberts and the company he worked for at the time, Origin Systems, released Wing Commander, a space flight simulating game with advanced dogfighting, well, advanced for the time. Available as an MS-DOS game, it's a computer game rather than a video game. Since you played it on, guess what, a computer, though the series would occasionally appear on video game consoles. While it wasn't the first space simulation with dogfighting, it was for a while the one that became the standard against which all other games in the genre were compared to. With each subsequent release, technical improvements allowed better sound and graphics, more impressive cinematics, with full motion video starring real actors such as Mark Hamill and Malcolm McDowell. Now those scenes look a little clunky and blocky and quaint now. Sorry, actually, that's where the sentence ends. There'd also been a short animated series from 1996 featuring Hamill and McDowell as voice actors. At some point, Origin Systems had been sold to large publisher Electronic Arts, and after working on several more projects, Roberts and a few colleagues struck out on their own with Digital Anvil.
Or he can push the envelope a little bit.
They were going to make more games, though only a few eventuated, but they were also going to get into the movie business.
Groping around like some pathetic sandworm on ISIS 7?
Roberts had snaffled the rights to make a film version of Wing Commander. While Roberts had directed the full motion video sequences for his games, here he would make his debut as a feature film director.
I will be most interested in this new picture.
And while the film is set in the same universe with many of the same characters, the main roles would be recast. Wing Commander was shot in Luxembourg, which, funnily enough, is the same thing that happened to my late grandfather years ago after he was caught having an affair with the Prime Minister's niece. In order to get the film in theatres before some other random space movie in 1999, the production of Wing Commander had a shortened schedule. It is a relatively small film, with the majority of action taking place in various Raptor cockpits and on board the Tiger Claw, which for its part is basically a stand-in for an aircraft carrier, but with lasers. David Arnold composed some of the music, with Kevin Kiner fleshing out the majority of the score. It's suitably old-school Space War stuff, and it's probably one of the more successful elements of the film. Wing Commander's direction is decent enough. The blocking of shots, the lighting, the editing is all relatively competent.
We should be flattered.
Wing Commander is generally not a flashy looking film, apart from these two shots where Roberts used the then groundbreaking 360 camera shot. Basically, it's a curving array of dozens of 35mm still cameras which surrounded the actors, and when they were triggered, either simultaneously or in rapid succession, he took the output of each camera and turned it into a frame of film, well, basically to downplay a long process. It looks very cool. It was later done to death, but you know, it's still pretty cool. And Wing Commander did manage to feature the effect in a movie a few weeks before the debut of The Matrix, which arguably popularized the effect.
Bang, you're dead. Not fast enough.
It does seem like a lot of effort for one shot when you possibly could have gotten the exact same effect much more cheaply with a dozen out-of-work paparazzi looking for a scoop. Wing Commander's other special effects are decent enough for a relatively modestly budgeted late 90s science fiction film. It'll be fine, just so long as there are no other big special effects movies released the same year.
Shit.
Wing Commander's script was the subject of a lot of tinkering along the way, cutting out story points and character arcs of supporting characters in favour of just getting to the spaceship battles as quickly as possible.
I need intelligence, old friend.
While the dialogue is relatively adequate for this sort of film, it's just laden with explanations, exposition, little bits of backstory, basically a lot of stuff that is good for context, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things just could have been condensed so perhaps there was more room to explore the characters. Now, they don't seem to be particularly interesting characters, each coming off as any number of archetypes from similar films about military pilots.
You got balls.
You should see him.
Mine are bigger.
I've been told size doesn't matter.
She lied.
There's the guy with the unusual talent who will save the day.
Why me?
The loud best friend, the ice queen who eventually mellows, the superior officers who are highly doubtful or suspicious of the main character, a Belgian sleuth, and a guy who solves crimes by turning into a panther.
Manimal.
And yes, they do feel like old school video game NPCs rather than living characters. I'm just waiting for the prompt to swap floppy disks. The Kilrathi make a few very fleeting appearances, where they do look a bit like they did in the games but without fur. So these are the Mr. Bigglesworth Kilrathi. Fleeting appearances of expensive props and monsters is usually a giveaway for the filmmakers not being 100% happy with the result. However, if they had applied that idea to the entire film, Wing Commander would have ended up as a 5-minute interstitial running in between the news and the weather forecast.
This unstable gravity well's gonna suck us in one molecule at a time, sir!
The film was released in theaters, and its backers found that there was not a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, just ambivalence to the movie, and very little was said of it ever again, apart from Freddie Prinze Jr. calling it out for being a disappointment. Now that's harsh coming from Freddie Prinze Jr.
You think he's right?
Chris Roberts did some more directing work, mainly on television projects, but he would push into producing other people's movies for a time, many of which only existed because of a weird tax law that existed in Germany at the time. And then there is Star Citizen. So if you're just here to talk about Wing Commander, that part of the video has pretty much ended, while we unpack Star Citizen.
Go buy yourself a new ass. Drinks? Anybody? Kidding.
By the 2000s, the space sim genre still had its fans, but in general the games industry had moved on to other genres with larger player bases. But then by the 2010s, crowdfunding had emerged as a way for creators of games in dormant genres to raise funds directly from fans in exchange for making games that the likes of Electronic Arts would no longer deem profitable enough to bankroll.
I'm not too much for nostalgia, soldier.
Chris Roberts popped up with a pitch for Star Citizen, an ambitious space sim game that would update the Wing Commander formula into a massively multiplayer game made with the latest technology. Ambitious seems to be underplaying what Roberts Space Industries was selling, so we might need to make up a new word like massively hypertronicating. Star Citizen blew through its funding goals and then didn't stop. A number of development houses around the world were set up by Roberts and his company, Roberts Space Industries, mainly under the Cloud Imperium banner, all beavering away at making Star Citizen. Pre-production began in 2011 and development by late 2012. However, here we are in early 2025 and it's still getting there. It's not quite there, but getting there.
The situation here remains quite fluid.
Backers can play alpha builds, which are generally not considered a complete game. So while an alpha build is typically playable from start to finish, it can still have many bugs and assets which are not final. 13 plus years is a very long time in game development, and Star Citizen seems to have fallen foul of feature creep, whereby new features are constantly added, technologies upgraded, and then there are just the standard development roadblocks that can happen. Oh, and there's also a full single-player spin-off, Squadron 42.
Buy one, get one free.
Feature creep does sound very much like the text chain I have with my nephew each year when he's sending me his Christmas wish list. First he asks for a skateboard, then it's a hoverboard, then a Segway, and now it's a Polestar.
I don't know, it seems pretty risky.
All the while, Roberts Space Industries is still raising funds, over $774 million by the end of 2024, mainly from selling in-game items such as spaceships for use in games, where some of these cost around $1,000. RSI are fairly transparent with their schedules, plus the reasons for things slipping, and of their fundraising endeavours. That is much more transparent than most developers. Even after all of these years, 2023 and 2024 were the project's biggest fundraising years. And it's a project that looks phenomenal, more blindingly ambitious than Tom Cruise's dental hygienist. So why is there a common, nagging feeling felt by a not insignificant part of the gaming world that it all might be some sort of scam or grift or con? Now, I have no skin in the game or the genre, just an outside observer interested in game development. And I can sort of see why there is that perception. Is it a scam, a con, or a grift? Time may prove me wrong, but probably not. At the time this video was posted, it still has to hit that magical and as yet elusive 1.0 release, and it's clearly a wildly ambitious project where grand promises, technical issues and project management have met in a battle royale. We just have to wait and see who prevails. If you are watching this in the future and it's all panned out all right, then hooray. And if you're watching this in the future and things didn't, well, you know, shit happens.
Of course, I would have backed you up if you tried anything. Oh, is he gone? Come on! Come on, pal!
The fans of the game will defend Star Citizen to their dying breaths, and they may very well have to wait that long.
They're having a hard time letting go.
While those who are convinced it's all a giant scam may never be convinced otherwise.
We'll see.
So we, like those who are still buying things in the game, we'll just really have to wait and see when, if we ever get the answer. Me, I'm just waiting for the long-awaited collaboration between Roberts and George R.R. Martin. I believe they are inventing cryogenic hibernation for just this situation.
Don't you ever play that stupid game with me.
So back to the subject of this video, the Wing Commander movie, which is also probably, almost definitely, not a scam, but also probably, almost definitely, not a particularly good movie.
I don't like it. What don't you like, Paul?
I mean, it's not especially awful, but it doesn't really have much to recommend it unless you really can't get enough of space combat movies, and you've already watched all of the good ones 100 times, and you've gotten bored of the average ones, and then out of morbid curiosity, you feel compelled to see if there are any gems in the pile labelled mediocre space movies.
A Kilrathi capital ship has penetrated the Quasar's jump point and is in Earth space. Copy.
If you're a fan of the games, you'll probably get more of a kick out of watching the FMVs from the old video games.
He's got a point, you know.
Though for everyone else, it's eminently skippable.
Does everyone here think I go around making suggestions?
If you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe, leave a comment below, or check out some of our other videos.
Did you just do that to impress me?